And really excited to be joined here today on Sports Spectrum by Moe Williams, former Jaguars offensive lineman and the current Jacksonville Jaguars team chaplain. Moe Williams, welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Hey, Jason, good morning. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yes, great to have you on the show, Moe. It's interesting, you're a former player with the team that you're now a current team chaplain of. That's got to be quite unique, I think. I've been around now for 3 or 4 years in this sports and faith space, and certainly been around in sports for a long time. I don't see too many players being a team chaplain of the team that they played for many years. So that's quite unique, the position you're in.
It is unique. I know I'm one of the few guys who are actually former player who's back now with their team that they played with and being a chaplain. I had my former chaplain, he was in a similar role as he was Anthony Johnson. He served over 14 years with the team. He played for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was a running back from the University of Notre Dame. So he kind of was my example and one that kind of encouraged me that I actually can do this. And I was developing a heart for ministry and sports ministry specifically. And I didn't know that the Jacksonville Jaguars was even an option because Anthony Johnson was there and was doing a tremendous job. And but this guy had a way just to kind of open up these doors and opportunities for me to step into. And even in my town that I've been in since 2001, to now go back and minister to the players and the coaches in a place that I was there for a very long time.
If I asked you at any point during your playing career, you played with Jacksonville from 2001 to 2009, that you would someday be the team chaplain for the Jaguars, would you have just laughed at me?
I probably would have laughed at you. I really started developing. I was a guy who developed in my faith and like in the league. I didn't grow up in church. I really my junior year in high school I got saved, and so really trying to grow up spiritually happened in front of the world. Being a University of Michigan standout athlete, winning national title, Big Ten championships there, and learning how to really grow up in a sports environment where there's so much attention on you. And I'll say it was challenging, but it gave me a different perspective on really how to, I guess, bring glory back to God and get it off of me.
You said you were saved when you were in high school. Can you take us back to that moment and what led to that?
Yeah, definitely. I had a season in my junior year. I just had a season. I started having all these questions about God, like if there was a God, would he want to know me? And if there was a God, what does that even look like? And I started having people I started noticing people talking about their faith in the locker room. And it's kind of cool that he's a coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now, Larry Foote. He actually got saved and he came back and he was talking about everything that he was learning at church. And I was like, oh man, this is cool. I'm having all these questions right now. And he invited me out to church with him. And I'll never forget going in on that day, man. It's just the church was amazing. The service was, the praise and worship was good. And the message was good. The people were just live. And at the end, the pastor gave an invitation for those who wanted to receive Christ as their personal Lord and Savior. I almost ran down to the altar because finally my questions were about to be answered. And I say that's the day the journey began for me, and and it hasn't stopped since. And I've learned to see him now as a long-suffering God, a guy who is patient with me, because I have not been perfect through this process.
No, if you find somebody who's perfect, please let me know, because I haven't found one either. That is so true. Yeah, exactly. Moe Williams is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. So as a chaplain, what does that role entail right now for you? Especially knowing that we're taping this, we're recording this in the early part of the summer. And, we're not even sure what football is going to look like in the fall just yet. We're presumably going to have a season. But for you, not even being able to be in contact with a lot of guys, I'm presuming that Zoom has been a big deal for you. But what does that look like right now? Maybe even just start with the off season and ministering to players as for such a time as this, as it says in Esther.
Yeah, definitely. This year is different. I think without a doubt, we're unprecedented times, and we're all learning how to navigate it. On platforms like Zoom, Microsoft Teams have been huge in way of connecting with people. And just my job, usually in the off season, this is when I'm connecting and building relationships, getting to know the new rookie class, getting to know all the new free agents, and a lot of that has been taken away because we all are in our own cities. Some of us still quarantined in our homes. And so the vehicle of Zoom has been good. We've been able to have a few Bible studies. And I'm really just been praying for my players, my coaches, my organization, just giving them time and space to really process this. And as the Lord leads, I call certain players and we kind of navigate and talk through some of the things that they're dealing with from a family perspective, from a biblical perspective, like how are you processing? What are you seeing? And so we had, Jacksonville was one of the first teams to actually to lead the protest here a few weeks ago. And I had just sent a text message to our player personnel guy, and he texted me back and was like, the next day, he was like, do you mind coming down and being part of the protest? And then I was like, yes. And I got a text me later, do you mind praying for our group before we head out? And so I had a chance to pray for our team, for our city, and just what we're all going through as a nation, as a country right now. And it's, I think without a doubt, we cannot deny that we need our faith and that there is a God who has put the whole world on hold in a sense to really figure out what's going on in the season.
Yeah. What's that been like as that type of a leader, right? A spiritual leader? Because I see a lot of protests and I see a lot of people speaking out and people like myself asking questions, trying to learn, trying to get better. But it has to come from a place for me as a believer of who is Christ and what is he talking or trying to say during this, right? So Jesus leading me as the center of my life. And for so many believers, I think they want to have Christ at the center, but they get caught up in politics or even a movement that isn't necessarily centered around Christ. So what I'm going to ask you, Mo, is during this time where it's important to lend your voice and to certainly support those who are hurting, right? And who are feeling pain, leading from a spiritual perspective in Christ and that fueling you and your faith kind of leading you. Can you kind of talk us through that a little bit, especially not only because you're a team chaplain, but you're also just a human being who loves the Lord?
Absolutely. Just without a doubt, this has been a difficult season. What we're dealing with from the COVID-19, and then we head out of that, and now we have a doggone race war, so to sense, that's going on in our country.
Yeah.
And as I watch the news, as I listen to Facebook videos and posts, and I hear all these different things and opinions that's going on, I'm often asking myself, what is truth? And the word really helps to balance me that out, and just it really helps me to gain the right perspective. And I know I've seen people really motivated by fear, one from COVID-19 because they watch the news all day and they feel like, hey, if I step outdoors, I'm gonna die. It's just how many conversations I've had with family members is like, hey, God is not giving us a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. And just reminding them, just like as a believer, we have to recognize He has not motivated us to walk around in fear, but He has motivated us to walk around in wisdom, and we do understand the times. And so I say all that to say, and so when you transition now over to what's going on with Black Lives Matter and those different issues, I think we have to be. It was one scripture as we enter this season that we're kind of in Psalms 46:10, and it says, He says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." And that still speaks to me right now because there's a lot of reactionary things going on. People are responding to fear from COVID-19. They're responding like, no, my blackness, my whiteness. They're responding from just their culture, but we have to remember who we are in Christ. And I've really been doing a study through Ephesians where it talks about our identity as believers. And he goes on just to remind us that we are a chosen people, that we've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, and that we are blameless in His sight. And the reason I bring that all out, because yes, I am a Black man. Yes, and yes, we have our different cultural backgrounds, but at the end of the day, I'm a believer. And God has, He has brought all of us together and really brought brought peace between the cultures if we really recognize who we are. And so how do we respond? And Philippians just talk about, as believers, that we need to respond in a manner that's in a conduct worthy of the gospel. Then if we are saying we are believers, we need to go out here and show the love of God. Have some empathy for people and just really hear their stories and figure out why they're so frustrated right now. And like no time before, we need to be praying and really trying to contextualize this situation that we're in right now. And it's almost like the book of Revelations that's been dumped in our laps. And so to say. And so if anything, man, like God, like what are you saying in this season as believers? We not only need to be praying, we need to be reading, but we need to be listening to how the Spirit of God will lead us in the season, because every black person is not angry. Every white person is not prejudiced, but we have to understand what is truth right now.
Put yourself back into the position of being a player, and you were selected in 2001, second round of the NFL draft by Jacksonville, pick number 43 out of Michigan. Just a little spot there. I'm sure that number 43 means a lot to you when you think back to those journeys of playing football. But put yourself back to being a player in your early mid 20s. And if you were a guy right now playing in your early to mid 20s, some of the guys that you're discipling and working with, and having to, I don't know, compartmentalize and process all that's been going on from a worldly perspective, right? From a political perspective, from a movement perspective, with the racial tension that you've been seeing. How do you think you would have been able to process that when you were playing, if that were you now, when you were 25, 26 years old?
Yeah, definitely. I was telling my wife, I would have been on the streets protesting peacefully. I definitely would have been out there I would have used my platform to really make a stance for justice. And I think there's been a lot of injustice going on. Don't think it has been a lot of injustice going on in our country. And so I definitely would have been using my platform to see what I can do to affect change and really just be a voice. And I think you need leaders. Even back then, I would have done my best to be a leader. I wasn't necessarily an outspoken type then, but I stood for righteousness, and I definitely would have made a stance. And so to say, if I had to go out there and protest now, I can't go out there alone. I got some injuries and stuff from football. I need to get my butt in the house. Yeah. But my younger me, definitely. And so the way that God can use me now is to encourage the generation to keep reading, keep understanding what the real issues are. And beyond the injustices that are going on, really understand the narrative that's really happening, so you can see for yourself and you can think not from the color of your skin, but intellectually, spiritually, what's actually taking place.
It's really well said. Moe Williams is our guest here on Sports Spectrum, the former Jaguars offensive lineman, the current Jacksonville Jaguars team chaplain. You mentioned that the injuries, that there's still some injuries and some things that hurt right now. And I'm just curious, from a sports perspective, you played that position of offensive line. It's such a grueling position. You look like you were a lot bigger, I'm guessing, when you played. You don't look like an offensive lineman as you and I look at each other, Mo, right now. You look more like a linebacker. But that's good. That's a good sign, I'm guessing. But that is a grueling position. Can you kind of describe for people, because it's also a thankless position too, what it's like to play that position, and maybe some of the pain that you have to withstand and kind of fight through on a daily basis? You did it for 9 seasons with Jacksonville. And I know, just talking to a lot of guys, that, you're 40, 41, I think, right now.
Yes.
And what does your body feel like at 41? Maybe that gives people the best snapshot of what it's like to play 9 years as an NFL offensive lineman.
Definitely. It depends on the day. Yeah. I'm 41 and started over 100-something games in the NFL and blocked for some great guys. But my body right now, it's okay. I definitely had some injuries that I have to deal with. One of the reasons I stopped playing, because I had bone on bone in my right knee. So arthritis that I'm dealing with there, and some hip issues. Yeah. And so those are the things. I got some crooked fingers, and there's some cool battle wounds I get to show my kids now. Like, yeah, your dad got crooked fingers, got a plate in the leg on this side. Yeah. But it's definitely, if you're gonna play football, you're gonna come away with something. And everybody's injuries are different. I thank God that I have a sound mind, but I definitely I have my days where I wake up like, yep, there go that game we played against Pittsburgh right there.
So you'll know right from one injury or one little creak in the arm or pain that you remember where that's exactly from.
Sometimes I know. I know when I felt the pain in my ankle when I broke my leg versus the Tennessee Titans my second year. I think that was a pain like any other. My left tackle got beat, the quarterback got sacked, and the defensive lineman and the quarterback fell into my right ankle and just snapped my tibia and sprained every ligament. And so when I have some pain there, I instantly go back there and like some trauma that has happened. And but it's almost like I wouldn't change it though. I'm thankful for my time in the NFL, my time for playing football. It was probably some of the best times of my life. And it was the unrealistic thing. Right now, I don't get a chance to throw people around, slam them to the ground, and say, hey, have a good day. That just doesn't happen anymore.
Right. Yeah. What was a typical Monday morning like after a game for you, knowing that you were in the trenches on whatever the amount of plays, 80 plays or whatever it is in a game that you play on the offensive side, 60 plays, and you're literally pushing and battling and scraping and scratching and clawing on every single play against a guy who's trying to get by you. What does that feel like on a Monday morning?
It's usually Mondays weren't bad, but something about Tuesday. Tuesday.
So the extra day.
that extra day, Monday, I don't know if I still was on a high. So if we had a night game, it's probably, I was a little bit sore, but Tuesday, it was like, man, the soreness really came in, and I had to really go out and get in the cold tub, massage, stretch, and just really work on my body, get it ready for the next week. And the older you got, as I played in the league, those Tuesdays hurt a little bit more.
Oh, I can only imagine what that feels like. Now, let me ask you about, as a player in the NFL, what do you think was your biggest struggle for you as a person? You said you got saved when you were in high school, and you said you kind of grew in your faith during your time in the league. What was the struggle for you that you battled through that you can kind of look back at now and say, yeah, it wasn't fun going through it, but I'm glad I went through it because it's helped make me who I am right now?
I was a perfectionist. And this really feeling like everything that I had to, that in order for me to keep winning and sustaining my career, everything, that I had to be perfect. And man, I tried my tail off to be. I had a perfect game, that had a perfect life. You name it. It was just and I struggled with, because I was always coming up against realizing I wasn't perfect and that I had flaws, and so that's honestly, I have to even keep a guard on that today. It's just stop focusing so much on perfection, but really embracing just who I am and how God created me to be.
I know that Athletes in Action, which is who you're working through as the team chaplain with the Jaguars, and they do such great work. They're particularly focused on VBC, Victory Beyond Competition. So let me just ask you, I guess, simply, what does that mean to you, and how have you found victory beyond competition on your journey, Mo?
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was just talking about, perfection. So I experienced victory beyond competition when I recognized that perfection did not equal success. And so it translated not only from my game time. And yes, I wanted to win every game and every battle that I possibly had. And I would focus so much on each game. I would often tell the story. We might have 75 plays a game. 7 of those plays may be outstanding. I had maybe 5 plays where I got beat a little bit, maybe got a little pressure on the quarterback. But instead of going home and rejoicing about those good plays, I'm thinking about those 5 plays, and they just go around over and over and over in my head because I couldn't reach perfection. And so one year, I had a teammate of mine who was, as I was kind of just struggling with this in my faith, like, man, like, Lord, I'm trying to be perfect. I just can't be perfect nowhere. And he said, he's like, you know what, Mo? One of my verses, Colossians 3:23. I was like, what's that one? He says, whatever you do, whatever you do it as unto the Lord and not as unto men. And messing up the translation a little bit.
No, that's it.
But that particular scripture, it really lit a fire in me as I began to meditate on it. Like, you know what? I'm not going out here playing to please these coaches or to please the fans and to do all these different things. I work my tail off every day to be the best Moe Williams that I possibly be on game day or in life. I like, Lord, receive my worship. And so my prayer and my mindset shifted from receive my worship as I go out here and I know I put in excellence during the week. And I recognize that the man across from me is getting paid just like I am. I just ask that you will receive my worship and that my effort out here on the field today that you will receive. And that was my focus. And that's a focus. As long as I keep that focus, I get so much peace and so much joy when I take the focus off of me having to be perfect. But Lord, receive my worship, because the part of life that we have these battles, and God never promised us that we'll never have battles. We have battles that we're going to go through. Some that we'll look outstanding, and some of them will look like, oh man, I got to get better. But our true joy and victory is in Him. And so overcoming perfection and just recognize that I am loved because I put my faith in Him and nothing else. I'm not going to work myself into a better position with God. I think having those liberties and understanding those truths really helped me out and really helped me to have victory beyond the game.
Hmm.
And it helped me to have confidence even now.
I read that you're actually studying theology in college right now, right? At Liberty. Are you going through this program to kind of, I wouldn't call it a program, but you're going through, is it seminary that you're actually in?
Yeah, I'm going through seminary at Liberty right now. I actually loving the class. I've been taking hermeneutics. Right now I'm in homiletics. I think I'm saying it right, but it's just preaching and just so I've been doing all this preaching. But I was like, Lord, I want to get seasoned. What do the vets know? What does Spurgeon know about preaching? I want to know it all.
Yeah.
And so I've just been really enjoying just learning and growing, and just really feel like God's called me in this area. And so I'm just investing in myself and just really stewarding the gift that He's given me.
That's good. Last question here, Mo. We ask this to all of our guests on Sports Spectrum. What are you learning from God today? What's He teaching you? We kind of have talked a little bit about some of that through the sort of unrest that we are in as a country right now. But what's the great lesson the Lord has shown you or taught you, in this season of life that you're in right now?
That He's God. And this and that He has us. I think going back to that verse from Psalm 46:10, where it says to be still and know that I am God. And just it's a lot just been wrestling with, trying to figure out and just trying to get a pulse on. And I'm just at a season where being still and just trusting Him that He is working a plan. And that He's not going to allow COVID-19, or He's not going to allow the injustices in our country to be exalted among the nation, that His name will be exalted. And so just really just anchoring in and recognizing that He is working a plan to bring His people together. And like any other time before that, as believers and myself, is just boldly go out and proclaim this gospel. Because people need to hear the truth. And so that's what one of my focuses is right now, is just willing to go out and share. I feel like God's been saying, like, man of God, just speak the word, man. And so that's what I'm looking to do in this season. I'm just stepping out in boldness and confidence, and I know He's done a great work in me. People need to hear this message.
He is Moe Williams, the former Jaguars offensive lineman, 2001 to 2009, second-round pick back in 2001. Current Jaguars team chaplain, doing great work through Athletes in Action, part of Crew's ministry, and just love the work that they do. And some of the people that are involved with Crew and Athletes in Action are just amazing people and do such great work. So, Mo, this is awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you, and I wish you nothing but the best. Let's have you back on, and we'll talk some more football next time.
Let's do it. I appreciate it, Jason. Thank you.